Good evening and welcome to our special report. Tonight, we are focusing on a story that is sending shockwaves through Washington, rattling financial markets, and leaving millions of Americans wondering what comes next. Donald Trump is facing a mounting crisis as his carefully laid plans appear to be unraveling. Headlines across the country are carrying the same theme. Collapse accelerates as plan goes utterly wrong. But what does that really mean? To answer that, we need to take a closer look at the ongoing government shutdown, the strategy behind it. It may be backfiring in ways that could redefine the course of Trump's presidency. The United States government has officially entered a prolonged shutdown. Essential services have slowed, hundreds of thousands of federal employees are caught in limbo, and countless families are left uncertain about when paychecks will resume. On the surface, shutdowns are not new to American politics, happened under both Republican and Democratic administrations, but this shutdown is different. Rather than a dispute over one specific budget item or short-term policy disagreement, this shutdown has been deliberately engineered by Trump and his inner circle as a weapon to force Congress and the American public to accept a much larger agenda. It is heavily influenced by Project 2025, a blueprint drafted by conservative think tanks and Trump allies that seeks to reshape the federal government by concentrating executive power, cutting back agencies, purging employees who are not fully aligned with the administration's ideology. For weeks, the White House has portrayed this approach as both necessary and bold, presenting it as a long overdue corrective to what Trump calls a deep state, entrenched within Washington. At rallies, Trump has promised his supporters that the shutdown is not a crisis reset button that will allow him to eliminate waste, punish political opponents, and strengthen the presidency. Yet behind the confident rhetoric, cracks are already beginning to show. The longer the shutdown drags on, the more severe the consequences become, and the more resistance Trump is encountering, not only from Democrats but also from within his own Republican Party. Inside the Senate, opposition is building rapidly. Several GOP lawmakers who initially supported the shutdown strategy are now questioning whether Trump has overplayed his hand. Senators facing tough re-election battles in 2026 are especially worried. Their constituents are calling offices in record numbers, demanding answers about closed national parks, stalled veterans' benefits, delayed Social Security processing. While Trump continues to claim that the American people are behind him, polling data suggests otherwise. Taken in the last 48 hours show a sharp decline in approval for the president's handling of the shutdown, with independent voters, often the decisive bloc in national elections, expressing frustration and fatigue. At the same time, Trump's attempt to use the shutdown as a stage for executive power plays has raised alarms among legal scholars and policy experts. For instance, his announcement that tens of thousands of federal workers would not simply be furloughed but outright terminated caught many by surprise. Traditionally, shutdowns involve temporary work stoppages, employees returning to their posts once funding is restored. By framing the shutdown as an opportunity for permanent firings, Trump has crossed into legally and constitutionally untested territory. Unions have already signaled their intention to challenge these moves in court, setting up a potential legal battle that could drag on for months. If Trump loses in court, only will he fail to execute this part of his agenda, but he will also appear reckless for overreaching in the first place. Meanwhile, the economic impact is spreading. Wall Street reacted nervously to the third consecutive day of shutdown, with major indexes posting losses amid fears of slowed consumer spending and government instability. Businesses that rely on federal contracts are already experiencing disruptions, and ordinary Americans are bracing for delays in everything from tax refunds to food assistance programs. Analysts warn that if the shutdown continues for several more weeks, the ripple effects could tip an already fragile economy into a downturn. That would be devastating for Trump, who has repeatedly tied his political success to the strength of the economy. A downturn could rob him of one of his most consistent talking points and weaken his position in both domestic and international negotiations. These warning signs, Trump has doubled down. In a press conference earlier this week, he declared, "We are not caving. This shutdown will last as long as it takes to bring Washington under control and give power back to the people." Supporters cheered, but the response from the broader political establishment was more muted. Conservative commentators, usually reliable allies, are urging caution. On Fox News, analysts warned that the president risks alienating middle-class families who may support conservative policies in theory, but cannot withstand the personal and financial toll of an indefinite government closure. This is where the narrative of collapse begins to take shape. The White House set out to use the shutdown as a demonstration of strength, but instead it is being interpreted by many as a sign of weakness. Rather than proving that Trump can bend Congress and the bureaucracy to his will, the crisis has underscored just how divided and uncertain his political coalition has become. The boldness of the strategy may impress his most loyal followers, but it is doing little to win over moderates or expand his base. In politics, perception often matters as much as results, and right now, the perception is that Trump is trapped in a high-stakes gamble that is slipping out of his control. Another element complicating the situation is the role of international perception. Governments are watching the shutdown closely, and many see it as evidence of a United States distracted by internal chaos. This weakens America's hand in global negotiations. Whether it is trade talks with China, defense commitments to NATO allies, or the highly contentious Middle East peace efforts, Trump's ability to project stability is undermined by images of shuttered government buildings and congressional gridlock. Allies are unsettled, while adversaries may feel emboldened to test America's resolve. In summary, the government shutdown was meant to showcase Trump's dominance and deliver on promises of restructuring Washington. It is exposing vulnerabilities in his political strategy, threatening the economy, and creating openings for his opponents. Far from consolidating power, the shutdown may be accelerating a collapse in confidence, both among voters at home and partners abroad. And this, viewers, is only the first chapter of the unraveling story. In the next segment, we will examine Trump's foreign policy gamble in the Middle East, his controversial Gaza peace plan, and why many experts believe it could become the second major pillar of his collapsing strategy. As the government shutdown continues to dominate headlines here at home, President Trump has simultaneously launched a foreign policy initiative that he clearly hoped would define his legacy as a peacemaker. In a dramatic televised address, he unveiled what he described as a comprehensive roadmap to end the conflict in Gaza and reshape the future of the Middle East. The plan is sweeping, ambitious, according to the White House, designed to bring lasting peace to a region that has known little but war and instability. Yet almost immediately, the proposal drew intense skepticism. Some called it visionary, many others labeled it unrealistic, one-sided, and even dangerous. In Washington, as abroad, the reaction raised the same troubling question: is Trump once again overreaching? And is this plan destined to collapse under its own weight? Let's break down what the president actually proposed. At its core, peace plan demands that Hamas, the militant group controlling Gaza, disarm completely and renounce violence as a precondition for negotiations. In exchange, Israel would gradually withdraw its military presence from parts of Gaza in a phased timeline, while international forces would be deployed to oversee security and reconstruction. A multinational governing authority, by the United Nations and regional Arab states, would temporarily administer Gaza until new elections could be held. Trump has framed this as a balanced compromise, prioritizes Israel's security while also offering Palestinians a pathway to self-governance and economic stability. On paper, the structure of the plan sounds detailed, but experts were quick to point out that many of its provisions are either politically infeasible or disconnected from the realities on the ground. The most glaring issue is the demand for Hamas to disarm. For decades, international mediators have tried and failed to achieve that outcome. Hamas views its weapons as central to both its political identity and its leverage in negotiations. Expecting them to simply hand over their arsenal, particularly in the wake of years of bloody conflict, is seen by many analysts as wishful thinking at best. Without credible enforcement mechanisms, critics argue, is more of a political statement than a workable roadmap. Another contentious element is the phased Israeli withdrawal. While some Israeli officials cautiously welcomed aspects of the proposal, factions within the Israeli government are deeply opposed. They see any withdrawal as a security risk and argue that Trump's plan effectively rewards terrorism by granting Palestinians international recognition without sufficient guarantees. This division inside Israel complicates implementation. Even if Prime Minister Netanyahu or his successor were inclined to cooperate, fierce domestic opposition could derail the process before it even begins. The international response has been equally divided. European leaders offered polite but measured support, praising Trump for engaging diplomatically but avoiding any firm commitments. Arab governments, particularly Egypt and Saudi Arabia, expressed interest in the plan's potential to stabilize the region, but stopped short of endorsing its more controversial elements. Iran, unsurprisingly, condemned the proposal outright, it a betrayal of Palestinian resistance. The United Nations welcomed Trump's engagement, but emphasized that lasting peace must come from dialogue between the parties themselves, from unilateral dictates imposed from Washington. Perhaps most damaging to Trump's credibility, however, was the mixed reaction from the Palestinians themselves. The Palestinian Authority in the West Bank cautiously welcomed certain humanitarian aspects of the plan. Hamas leadership in Gaza rejected its core terms almost immediately. In a statement, spokesperson declared, "We will not surrender our weapons, we will not accept foreign occupation in disguise, we will not allow Trump to decide our future." This stark rejection underscored the central flaw in the proposal. Without buy-in from Hamas, the group that actually controls Gaza has little chance of succeeding. Why then did Trump push forward with such a controversial initiative? According to White House insiders, the president saw the peace plan as a way to project strength on the international stage at a time when his domestic agenda was faltering. with the government shutdown sparking chaos at home, wanted a bold foreign policy announcement to change the narrative. By positioning himself as the statesman capable of achieving what past presidents could not, to regain momentum and reassure allies of American leadership. But instead of shifting the conversation, the plan has become another source of controversy. Media coverage has been dominated by skepticism, with analysts on CNN, The New York Times, and even conservative outlets questioning whether Trump has the diplomatic skill, or international credibility, to pull off such a complex deal. Diplomats warn that half-baked proposals can do more harm than good, raising expectations only to dash them when failure inevitably follows. In the Middle East, where trust is already scarce, another failed U.S. peace initiative could deepen cynicism and fuel extremism. Financial markets too have reacted nervously. Oil prices spiked after the announcement, reflecting fears that renewed tensions could destabilize the region further. Investors worry that rather than calming the situation, Trump's plan could trigger fresh clashes if either side feels emboldened or betrayed. For a president already grappling with economic fallout from the shutdown, thing he needs is volatility in global energy markets. Yet that is precisely what his foreign policy gamble appears to be producing. Within Washington, the political calculus is equally troubling. Democrats have seized on the plan as evidence that Trump is distracted and unfocused. Instead of ending the shutdown and reopening our government, the president is chasing headlines overseas with a plan that has no chance of success, one Democratic senator said. Some Republicans privately echo that sentiment, worrying that Trump's international overreach could weaken their party's standing at home, that Americans want solutions to immediate problems, like delayed paychecks and rising grocery prices, not grandiose foreign policy experiments. And then there is the issue of timing. Launching a controversial peace initiative while the government is partially closed creates an awkward contrast. Images of Trump shaking hands with world leaders are juxtaposed against images of American families lining up at food banks because their federal pay has been suspended. This contradiction fuels the perception that the president is out of touch with the struggles of ordinary citizens, for a leader whose political brand has always hinged on being a populist champion of the forgotten man and woman. This disconnect could prove damaging. Critics also point to the lack of consultation with career diplomats and regional experts. Reports indicate that much of the plan was drafted by a small group of Trump loyalists with limited experience in Middle East negotiations. This has raised concerns that the proposal reflects more of Trump's political instincts than serious diplomatic groundwork. State Department officials note that successful peace efforts typically require years of quiet negotiation, trust building, and international coordination. By contrast, the plan appears to have been rolled out hastily, without the necessary groundwork to ensure viability. Ultimately, the Gaza peace plan illustrates the same pattern that is becoming increasingly evident in Trump's broader presidency: a tendency to pursue bold, headline-grabbing moves without fully considering the long-term consequences. Just as the shutdown strategy was intended to showcase strength but has instead highlighted weakness, the peace plan was meant to project leadership but has instead exposed diplomatic naivete. Initiatives reflect a high-risk, high-reward style of governance, but both are now widely seen as risks that outweigh the rewards. As international skepticism hardens and domestic frustration grows, the Gaza plan may soon be remembered not as a bold vision but as another turning point in Trump's accelerating collapse. It has added another layer of doubt about his ability to govern effectively, at home or abroad. And as critics warn, the consequences of failure in the Middle East are far more serious than political embarrassment. They could shape regional dynamics for years to come, leaving behind instability and mistrust long after Trump has left office. In the next section of our report, we will explore the third major dimension of this unfolding crisis: growing backlash from within Trump's own political coalition. From Republican senators to conservative media voices, we will look at how discontent is spreading inside the very movement that once seemed unshakably loyal, and why that internal erosion could ultimately prove more dangerous to Trump than any shutdown or foreign policy misstep. As we've seen so far, Trump is facing serious challenges on two fronts at home. His gamble with the government shutdown has sparked economic pain and public frustration abroad. His Gaza peace plan has been widely criticized as unrealistic and politically tone-deaf. But perhaps the most alarming development for the president comes not from Democrats, the media, governments. It comes from inside his own political coalition. Increasingly, Republicans who once stood shoulder to shoulder with Trump are beginning to distance themselves. That growing chorus of dissent could be the clearest sign yet that his collapse is accelerating. For years, Trump has relied on a unique bond with the Republican base to maintain power. Party leaders often fell in line, even when they privately questioned his decisions, because they knew his popularity with grassroots voters could make or break their own political careers. But the shutdown and foreign policy controversies are straining that bond. Some lawmakers who once praised Trump as a transformative leader are now openly worrying about the political cost of continuing to defend him. Defections remain limited for now. History shows that once cracks appear in a political coalition, they can spread quickly. Consider the Senate. Republican senators from swing states have already spoken out against the shutdown strategy, calling it reckless and unsustainable. Behind closed doors, are voicing concerns that the president is dragging the party toward electoral disaster. With the 2026 midterms looming, senators know they will be judged not only on their own records, but also on the broader perception of their party. If Trump's approval ratings continue to fall, vulnerable incumbents may decide that breaking with him is their only path to survival. That calculation could weaken Trump's leverage in Congress, making it harder for him to advance his legislative priorities. In the House of Representatives, the mood is similarly tense. While Trump still commands loyalty from many in the conservative wing, moderate Republicans are growing restless. Their districts, suburban and more centrist, are already showing signs of voter fatigue with the endless turmoil. For these lawmakers, defending a prolonged shutdown while their constituents' lives are being disrupted is a risky gamble. Have hinted that they may be willing to work with Democrats to pass a funding resolution if the White House refuses to compromise. Such a rebellion, if it materializes, represent a direct challenge to Trump's authority. Even in conservative media, once the president's strongest echo chamber, the tone is shifting. Outlets like Fox News and talk radio hosts still defend Trump on many issues. There has been a noticeable increase in criticism. Commentators argue that his shutdown strategy is alienating working-class families, the very voters he claims to champion. Others suggest that the Gaza plan shows a lack of serious diplomatic preparation, making the United States look weaker rather than stronger. When voices within the conservative media ecosystem begin to question Trump's judgment, signals to rank-and-file Republicans that it is acceptable to do the same. Meanwhile, influential conservative donors and business leaders are also expressing unease. The Chamber of Commerce and other powerful organizations have warned that a prolonged shutdown could cause long-term economic harm. Who once filled Republican campaign coffers are quietly urging lawmakers to distance themselves from policies they see as reckless. While Trump has often bragged that he doesn't need traditional donors because of his grassroots fundraising, the reality is that large contributions still play a critical role in competitive races. If those resources begin to dry up, the GOP's electoral machinery could suffer. Another factor undermining Trump's hold on the party is generational change. Younger Republican leaders, whom admire Trump's populist energy but reject his confrontational style, are beginning to emerge. They see an opportunity to chart a new course for the party, embraces elements of Trump's agenda without being tied to his personal controversies. Figures like these could become rallying points for a post-Trump GOP, further weakening his grip on the party's future. All of this raises an important question: how long can Trump maintain control if his coalition continues to fracture? The answer may depend on whether he can turn the tide in the coming weeks. The shutdown drags on and the Gaza plan falters, discontent will only grow. Each new defection, each new criticism, will embolden others to follow suit. Politics is often about momentum, and right now, the momentum appears to be shifting against the president. Yet Trump is not one to retreat quietly. Those who know him best say he is likely to double down, lashing out at critics, attacking dissenters within his party, framing himself as the victim of betrayal. This strategy may rally his most loyal supporters, but it risks deepening the divide between Trump and the broader Republican establishment. The more isolated he becomes, the harder it will be to govern effectively. The larger story here is about more than one shutdown or one peace plan. It is about the sustainability of Trump's leadership style. For years, he has thrived on disruption, confrontation and high-risk gambles. That approach brought him to the presidency and allowed him to dominate the political conversation. But disruption has a shelf life. When bold gambits repeatedly end in failure, they stop looking like strength and start looking like weakness. That is the danger Trump now faces, that his signature style, once seen as daring and unconventional, is now being interpreted as chaotic and destructive. As we look ahead, there are three key dynamics to watch. First, will public opinion continue to turn against Trump as the shutdown's effects deepen? Second, will international partners lose patience with his foreign policy experiments, further isolating the United States on the global stage? And third, will Republicans begin to openly revolt, breaking the president's stranglehold on the party? The answers to these questions will determine not just Trump's immediate future, but also the trajectory of American politics in the years to come. One thing is certain: the narrative of collapse is no longer confined to Trump's opponents. It is taking root within his own ranks, spreading quietly but steadily. And as history has shown time and again, leaders begin to lose the confidence of their own allies, the end can come faster than anyone expects. And so, viewers, we return to where we began: a presidency under immense strain, a plan gone wrong, and a leader whose once iron grip on his party and the nation's political agenda is beginning to slip. From the shutdown that is hurting everyday Americans, to a Middle East plan that is faltering before it even begins, to the growing chorus of dissent from within his own coalition, the signs of trouble are unmistakable. Whether you call it a collapse, a reckoning, or simply the consequences of unchecked ambition, is that Donald Trump's challenges are multiplying, not fading. As this story continues to unfold, we will be here to bring you the latest updates, analysis, and insights. Thank you for watching, and be sure to subscribe to stay informed on the developments shaping our nation and the world. This has been your special report.